see the path to the championship. I can see it.
Coca-Cola 600 belongs to Ryan Blaney.
Blaney's learned how to win over the last couple of months.
Blaney, Harmon, they spin behind him. It's going to be Blaney.
We're going to win this thing.
Ryan Blaney is going to win his way into the championship board.
You have to run a perfect race to get it.
Ryan Blaney is a NASCAR Cup Series champion.
What an unbelievable year. What an unbelievable playoffs for us.
This is the Team Blaney Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 149 of the Team Blaney Podcast. My name is Adam Rogers, and alongside me is co-host Steve Mez. This podcast is brought to you by fans for fans. Steve and I have been following the drivers of the Blaney racing family for 2 decades, and Team Blaney itself launched on social media back in 2014. Each weekly episode of the show offers an in-depth analysis of Ryan Blaney's latest NASCAR Cup Series race, plus news, notes, and special guest interviews all throughout the year. This week, we break down Team 12's run in the USA Today 301 at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Steve, welcome back to another episode of the show. Exciting week last week. Looked like it could have been a really thrilling and exciting week for us again this week. And the rain, some horrible moves on track, all kind of came together, and we're going to end up with an interesting show. At least I'll give it that. What do you think?
That's what I'm saying. There's going to be a lot to talk about. It's just, trying to stay away from negativity, I guess. Best thing about the whole weekend is speed. This team got the speed. They showed the speed. They gave them the speed. They put the speed right up behind people, and they were going to give them the speed all the way to the end if they could have. People without speed decide that they need to try something else, and what they call it, a low percentage move. Yeah, and that very irritating because, as we'll talk about later, it's the risk and the reward. I mean, where did you really think you were going to go? And you hear the explanations afterward. You hear the interview with him afterward, and he even knew that he wasn't going to do nothing with that. So it was just ridiculous. A guy who could have probably finished in the top 5 decides he thinks he's going to pass 2 or 3 cars with that big move. And then at the end result, he ruins the day of a guy who maybe could have won this race.
So before we get into all that fun discussion that will happen a little bit later on, I did want to point out some positive things. One, like I said, mentioned a big week last week for us, mainly because Ryan Blaney went to Victory Lane at Iowa. That was fantastic. We also had the opportunity for the second time on this podcast to put out a special episode with a quick interview with Ryan, talking about the win, talking about his championship a little bit, talking about his relationship with his new spotter, Tim Fedowa, who we also interviewed earlier this season. So really great week for us. So if the last week was the first time you caught us before, listened to us before, and you came back again for some more, welcome back. This episode is going to be very much what we do week to week, where Steve takes some really serious notes throughout the race. We go through a race report, we analyze it, we talk about practice and qualifying, the race, everything that happened, the pit stops times, strategy moves, maybe TV didn't cover it and we have to explain what happened. That's kind of what we do. So this is kind of a bread and butter episode for us. But if you did enjoy that interview with Ryan, we've interviewed 10, 12, 13 members of this team, and then also other people in the NASCAR industry, other NASCAR media folks and influencers. You can find a lot of those videos on our YouTube channel. So if you search for Team Blaney on YouTube and you find us there actually is even a tab on there too, where you can go straight to interviews and you can see all of that. So you can see our long form interview with Ryan last year, which I thought was really great too. So definitely go and check out the YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, if you're catching us for the first time now, subscribe. You do podcasts or catch us on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe, because we don't know when those things are going to pop up. The situation last Wednesday with that interview was such a surprise, pleasantly, and it was so fluid what had happened, and it could happen again. That's the best part about it, is we've got some nice contacts and good people, and Ryan is such a good person that he wants to talk to us, when he can. So subscribe to us, and who knows, next week we could be interviewing, like you said, we interviewed we've interviewed a couple spotters. We've interviewed half the pit crew now, half the road crew, the crew chief, and we get insight from those people from time to time too. That's another thing that's nice is I can drop a message with somebody and they'll get back to me pretty quick sometimes. Nothing controversial, but maybe a little bit more insight to maybe something that happened on Sunday. So, hit subscribe.
Yeah, definitely thank you to Ryan and his people and the folks at Team Penske that, for the second time, allowed that to happen. And if you didn't catch that interview, it's on all of our social channels. We're going to be posting clips, little clips of that. We did that a little bit last week too. We have a few more to put out this week and beyond. So keep looking for that. So let's jump back into it, back to this race this past weekend in New Hampshire. And let's talk about everything that went on there, and all of it starts in practice and qualifying, which once again was a little bit weird this week because they changed things up slightly.
Heavily, because they were going to have the two groups and they were going to have the qualifying, but the weather started to impede on that. And what was interesting is right away the rain had happened to such an extent they knew they were pushing everything back, and they wanted to try and get a practice in at least. So they canceled qualifying and try really hard to drive the track for practice. And they go from the two groups in practice to they're going to just have one practice and try to have as much track time as they can before 3:00. And this is real quick. I'm going to get on a soapbox here for a second because I got into it with a couple people online about this, about television windows. Okay. Television pays the bills. 50,000 or 100,000 people can show up at the track. It doesn't matter. 0 people showed up at the track a couple of years ago when they couldn't, right? But why were they still running races during COVID? Because television pays the bills. And the thing is if it doesn't happen within a window that television has for the program, qualifying and practice, let's say, by 3:00, they needed to be on to the Xfinity race. Okay. After the Xfinity race, there was 2 hours of daylight still. Okay. But television, whoever it was, the network covering them, doesn't have that time allotted for anything else. It's Law and Order or whatever else they have on at that hour. They go to their regular programming. Okay. And the point I made online was that once streaming gets more into being the main provider of the programming, streaming can just put up a stream anytime they want. And then all it is at that point is just informing the fans, whether they're at the track or the fans at home, okay, we're moving qualifying from 2:30 this afternoon to 7 this evening. Or we're moving it to 10 a.m. tomorrow because it looks like there's going to be a window tomorrow to do qualifying. And that was the concept, is because somebody said that this is the first qualifying that they've missed in 38 races or something like that due to weather. And that's a great stat. But I think they can do even better once the streaming services are in charge of the programming window, okay? Because the window now becomes the whole weekend. The window doesn't become just 2 hours that you have on Saturday morning into the afternoon because you have to hurry up and get to the next event. You can get the next event in, and then if there's daylight or the lights at the track later on, they can put it on if they want to. And the fans will be the ones to really, really benefit because you were there that Saturday. It rained at 1 in the afternoon, but at 6:30 that night they did qualifying anyway, and you were still there for it. So once streaming becomes more of the norm, and it looks like in the next couple of years it's going to be, you're going to see these windows. Maybe hopefully NASCAR will be able to move these windows around a little bit and still have practice and qualifying, even if it gets rain earlier in the day. Maybe have it later in the day or the next day. So that's my soapbox. Get off of it.
And I hope that's the goal for them too. I mean, that's the logical goal for us.
Yeah.
That we think they can do that. And Prime Video is going to have practice and qualifying through the first half of the season next year, and then also through the end of their races in their summer stretch. And then I think it might go to HBO Max and some of their stuff after that. So there's an opportunity there for that to definitely happen, and maybe we will have more opportunities for things to get shifted around and still get them.
I want to say some of the people that were arguing were people who understood it. They just don't like streaming. They just don't like hearing that word. But things are going to more of a pay-per-view type of thing anyway at this point. unless you're the NFL, where you're getting a ton of advertising dollars, and you you want to put games on Christmas on a Tuesday or Wednesday, you do it because everybody's going to watch. It's not quite the same for the smaller sports. You got to find television partners or streaming partners that want to have your programming and pay you a lot of money for it too. Don't get me wrong; these guys paid a ton of money to get to move NASCAR from other networks. So hopefully we see that it helps grow the sport, and people that are afraid of streaming. I'm sorry about that, but we're moving that direction. So.
So anyway, qualifying's canceled.
It's qualifying's canceled. So, it kind of was great for the metrics, because if you go to the metrics, the 12 team won the race the week before and was way up in the standings. And when you figure out the metrics, Chase Elliott gets the pole, but Ryan starts on the front row. So great job by the team in qualifying there. They really put it out there. Practice itself ends up being this, like I said, it was going to be a short practice, and it lasted 8 laps due to the rain. The rain didn't move in. And Vinny from our Discord chat was at the track, right? And this was great because TV doesn't show you everything. Ryan only runs 8 laps, but he passed 3 cars during the 8 laps, which if you're looking at his lap times, it's deceiving, because when you're passing a guy, you don't run a lap as fast as if you were just out in clean air running the lap. So he never puts up this, huge lap that everybody would want to see, because he literally was passing guys. And to be passing guys in a practice is pretty huge too. So he ends up with like the 12th best time or something like that for individual lap, but I would ignore that totally. And actually, the fact that he was passing guys during practice is pretty impressive. So and the 77 was the fastest lap. That tells you anything about how the practice went too. So he must have been one of the few guys that had some clean air. So we get to Sunday, and we're going to run stages of 70, 185, and 301, 8 sets of tires, fuel of 90 to 96 laps, pit stall number 6. Once again, a good qualifying gives you a good chance of a good pit stall. And this is a good one because there's nobody in front of him, open in front of him, and the 77 is pitting behind him. Now, they had a 24-hour before the day of the race, 24 hours to move the start time. And they did move it up to 2:06. I think it was supposed to be 2:36. So it gives them a half an hour, and they know that there's weather coming. But there was actually, as the week went on, this weather pattern got better and better, because it looked like it was going to rain most of the day Sunday. And then we got a window. So we knew we were racing toward the rain or wet weather tires even. So they were able to go ahead and, get started a little early. And, Tim, at the beginning, we were talking about like all the cars are going to kind of be all over the place because it's going to be a green track, and they really didn't practice much. So a lot of guys, depends on where their setups are, but early on, it might be kind of crazy. Chase takes the outside for the start, and the 9 does pull away. Ryan's racing against the 20, and by lap 2, the 20 gets by him, so he's P3 here at this point. And the next lap, the 1 passes, he's back to P4. And then the 22 passes Ryan and gets to P5 here. And it's only because he was kind of pinned down low. The preferred lane in the wet later on and right now, the preferred lane on restarts ends up being that high lane. He's kind of getting pressured from the 4, but by lap 8, he passes the 1 and gets up to P4. And at lap 9, the 1 and the 4 pass, so he's back to 6. And at lap 10, he passes the 1 back to get to P5. At lap 16, he's kind of talking about, just what kind of line to run. They're on the radio and they're looking for a good line and seeing who's running where. Lap 20, he's about half a second back of the 4 and about 6 seconds back of the leader. And it's kind of interesting as this stage goes on. The leader pulls away for a while, but then he kind of just slowly but surely comes back to the pack. And Ryan says he's starting to get loose. He's back to P6 now, and 4 seconds back of the leader. Lap 30, he's 1.1 back of the 4 car, and I'm sorry. And P6 is the 19 behind him now, and the 19 is over 2.5 seconds back. So he's closing on the car in front of him, but the car behind him is not making any ground. At lap 40, they're into lap traffic here, and he's less a second to the 4 car. And the 19 is kind of closed up now. And the 20 passed the 9 for the lead. So the 20 takes the lead at this point. Lap 45, 3/10 back to the 4. And lap 49, he passes the 4. And he's about 3.6 back of the lead at this point. And at lap 60, he's closing in on the 22. And, but then the 9. The 20 wins the stage here. Ryan P4. So right off the bat, good stage points up near the front still. So he kind of maintained where he was at. Gives them a good chance to work on it. And he tells them right off the bat he had 3 rounds of break into it. So this is kind of, I heard this once or twice during the day, what they had, and whether or not they want to reset that or not. Jonathan, Ryan discussed working on helping with the transition over the seams. They pit for 4 tires here, and then this is kind of I think we had texted this back and forth. This is kind of a fuel stop. This is a fuel stop that's not really, they ran a full thing and they wanted to fill it with fuel now in case they have a green flag pit cycle somewhere along the line. So they won't have to be on pit road as long. So it's a little bit over 11 seconds, but that's why. It wasn't because anybody messed up anything or anything like that. It was they were waiting on fuel. And it was funny because a lot of cars did this on pit road. They were in 4th and they came out 5th. So they didn't really lose, so everybody else was doing it here. The leader of the 20 takes the bottom. Ryan, actually, it was in P6, takes the top. Restarting at lap 78, sorts out the P7. And at lap 80, passes the 11 to get the 6th. And him and the 11 kind of go back and forth a little bit. But at lap 84, he passes the 9 car to get to P6. So there's a little bit of comers and goers now. At lap 90, the 11 and the 22 are in front of him, battling back and forth. So he's closing on them as they're kind of going back and forth. Lap 100 here, Ryan asks about running a higher lane, maybe seeing who else is doing it. Trying to get out of the dirty air of the 11 more than anything else. At lap 114, there's some lapper on tires. This is interesting. The 15 car had pitted at some point during this and was a lap or 2 down, but he had taken tires. So he had pressure tires and was kind of putting pressure on. But Ryan also says he's overall a bit better on the changes they made. Lap 120, the 15 hits the 11 in front of Ryan. And I saw this and was like, whoa. I mean, because the 11 was racing him hard and, but like I said, the 15 was a lap or 2 down too. Ryan kind of gets past the 11 for a second, then the 11 gets it back. That lap 124 green flag pit cycle here starts, and I've got him for a 9.774 second stop here, and the 11 and the 22 also pit. And coming off pit road, he kind of locked up the left front on one of the first turns, so he kind of thought that maybe it did a little damage, and it actually didn't. This had happened to a couple guys, and they showed it on the TV
20.
broadcast.
The 20 did it as well. Yeah, I'm definitely worried because if you flat spot a tire or something like that, it's going to bug you the whole rest of that run until maybe it equalizes a little bit. But he popped on the radio and told Jonathan that he thought he messed it up, but didn't seem to affect things too bad.
No. Now, we figured if the cycle completes from what we see on TV there and who hadn't pitted yet, that should cycle back to about 6th here. And he starts passing guys too. So lap 135 passing to 34, gets him to 11th, passes the 4, gets him to 10th. Lap 136 up to 9th, lap 137 does a bump and run on the 14 to get to 8th. At lap 47 up to 7th, passing the 47 up to 7th. Lap 138 passes the 10 car, gets to 6th. The 38 hasn't pitted yet, so he's actually gained on this pit cycle. Once the 38 pits, he will actually gain a position. But then we get 141 here. Instead of the 38 getting a chance to pit, we get a caution for the 31 car. Jonathan says number 5 or number 2. He's kind of split decision on this one. Ryan says, I don't think a 5 is a bad play. So they're pitting and they take 2 tires. The 11 and the 22 stay out. 11, 22, and the 7 stay out. And Ryan's pit stop is 4 seconds, 4.071. The 19, the 20, and the 9 are all on 2 tires in front of Ryan. 38 is the first car that took 4. He lines up P8. The next 7 after the 38 also took 2 tires. A lot of guys took the same play there. The choose cone here, the 11 is taking the top. Ryan takes the top behind the 20 car and restarts at lap 149. It sorts out the P9. At lap 152, he clears the 38, the 9, the 5, and the 7. And this is really impressive in the in-car camera because the 7 is kind of leading that train. It's in the high lane. The 7 is one of those guys that stayed out, so he didn't have any tires. And he pinned all those guys up there with him as Ryan went blowing by him. And at lap 154, Ryan's up to P5 because of that. And we get a caution for the 8 and the 10. They're staying out here. The choose, the 11 takes the top. Ryan takes the top. The 7 is behind him. The 38 is below him. They restart lap 160, and it sorts out to about P5. So at lap 163, passes the 20 up to 4th. Then there's a bobble in 1 and 2, and he loses a spot. And he was chasing the 22, and he's trying to be nice to the 22, and the 22, I think, slipped up. And because of that, Ryan slipped up. As far as I can tell, Ryan gets a little angry about this guy trying to be a nice guy thing, but he says something about not being nice anymore. But the thing is, they're teammates, and he's not trying to wreck him. And I don't think 22 is trying to wreck him either. But I think Ryan was faster than the 22. He knew it, and he was just trying to get around him. At lap 110, Tim says that there's no one running higher than him in 3 and 4. So the car was really good in 3 and 4. At lap 115, the 11 wins the stage. Ryan's P5. And, in the notes here, 11 and 22 stayed out earlier. And so they're going to need to stop longer for fuel, too, on this pit stop. And Ryan says, we're losing rear grip. The drive off was decent, good turn. So they're in P5, and I think there were a couple cars that took 2 tires here. So it kind of screws up everything. The 5, the 38, the 10, the 2, and the 21 all take 2 tires. The 45 and the 34 stay out. So Ryan ends up P10 to start the 3rd stage. And Jonathan comes on the radio and says, we're looking at 50 to 60 laps right now till it rains. And they restart lap 194. So now everybody's going to go crazy because we're racing to the rain. As far as they're concerned, we're racing to the rain. We're looking at rain. It's coming. We're going to race to the rain. And everybody on the track knows this. So they're all going to, every restart now is going to be like a wild man. And the leader took top here, the 45 car. Ryan was on the bottom, and we get a caution right away for the 9:22. I think Ryan's still in 10th here at this point. The next choose cone, the 45 takes the top. Ryan takes the top. He's behind the 21. They restart lap 200 here. He's following the 21, and this is kind of cool in the in-car because he does a great job, actually. Burton does on that high lane, getting by some people. And then we get a caution for the 7, the Spinorama. And he's up to P8 at this point. So the choose, the leader, 45 takes the top. Ryan in P8 takes the bottom, but he moves up to row 3. A bunch of guys took the top thinking, that's the better lane, the preferred lane. He is behind the 34 and the 38 at this point. They restart lap 206. He sorts out the P6. At lap 209, he passes the 38, gets to P5. At lap 210, passes the 34, gets to P4. At lap 211, passes the 5, gets to P3. And then we get a caution for the 19 here. So, and the 45 leads.
Didn't want to see this caution.
No, because
he was picking guys off. It was just
picking them off faster than them,
just like last week.
Yep. 45 is leading the 11. I think was P2. And then Jonathan says we're 10 to 15 till the rain. And I think this is it here, because if they can run longer in this next little thing before it actually rains, he's going to catch, and pass. The 45 leader takes the top. The 11 takes the bottom, and Ryan, on top here, and with the 38 behind him, restart lap 214. And they're too hot and wide with Denny down below. He's chasing the 45. 2 laps in, we get a caution for the 8 car, but he's up to P2 at this point. So he passed the 11, and we're looking good now. And Ryan almost had him in 3 and 4. He almost had the lead. And then we get the red flag for the rain. And that's what I'm saying. If this caution for the 8 doesn't happen and they can just drive to that rain, 3 or 4 more laps, he would have passed the 20 and he would have been leading. Either way, he's now P2 and we're getting this rain delay. And this is where the weekend gets interesting because a lot of people said, we've got these wet weather tires. Why don't we use them?
They don't. Yeah. Well, the people don't. I mean, NASCAR did come out. I think Mike Ford from NASCAR came out for about the 20th time, it seems like, to clarify what the tires are meant for. And they hate it that people and teams and drivers and media personalities keep calling them rain tires because they're not rain tires. They're wet weather tires. And unlike a road course, they are not. I can't even say they're designed. NASCAR, I can't even, and you could disagree with NASCAR on this, but this is what they are saying. They are not supposed to run them with precipitation falling from the sky. All throughout this red flag, even though there are points when people point out that drivers were doing interviews and stuff without umbrellas, there was precipitation falling for the most part. This current short track package, they took away the wipers, they took away the mud flaps or whatever you want to call them. So they can't run in precipitation because of the spray and without having the windshield wipers. So putting them on and running in that was not going to be a possibility. They're designed to get the race back started faster, get cars back on track faster after the rain has ended. So they were never going to put them on in the rain. I listened to, not the full thing yet, but Denny Hamlin's podcast for this week said absolutely no, we cannot race in the rain on an oval. And some of that I think is just personal opinion too from him. He doesn't like the idea in general. I don't know if it's because his cars haven't handled well when they have used these tires, but that's also true. But that's so I wasn't doing damage control. I was just trying to clarify during this break to some folks that were, if you followed social media, that's all you heard. And we've heard this at North Wilkesboro and other places where they've used them in the past. The Xfinity Series, I think, used them for the first time in a race this week. Like, what's the point of even having rain tires? And it's like, well, they're not rain tires. So hopefully at some point people will catch on. But I don't know. We're still calling the playoffs the chase. So I don't know that people are going to change their mind on what things are called in this sport. So
I know a couple things. I know that I was watching the weather for the break in the weather. Like, it looked like a storm that was going to move through, and looked like beyond it, there was a chance that there'd be a break in the weather. So that was the first thing. Secondly, the NASCAR app with the in-car cameras. There's 2 cameras on that app that are not in-car. They are what they call the battle cam, which is like they pick up, they're looking for battles on the track and they show them to you. And then the other one is like the aerial cam. And this one's like a camera from a higher view. Well, right away, when the lightning thing happened within this whole thing, the aerial cam went stagnant. It went to one view. It didn't move. So obviously they pulled the cameraman out of there because of the lightning. Then there's one other thing that's really cool in the NASCAR app with the scanners. The scanners have, the driver scanners, but at the top of the page, if you look, there's 2 other scanners. One is whatever the radio broadcast is that week. And the other one is the officials. And so I put the official channel on, and I don't hear nothing for a while. Sometimes it's just static, nothing. But I got it in the background, and then all of a sudden, because the TV had shown you that it was clearing up and it quit raining, I hear the officials start talking. And during this type of situation, they start directing. Okay, we want you to go down to turn 2 and do this. We got you to go down and make a loop down there and do this. They're moving the jet dryers around. They're moving the track crew around and telling them where to go. And one of the things he said to one of the guys over the air was, we're not trying to dry the track. We're just trying to get all the puddles off the track. And right away, I thought, we're going back. And this was, 6 o'clock or so, they started doing this. And then all of a sudden, within the next 15, 20 minutes, they had a start time that the engines would be fired at 6:43. So they all they were waiting for was that window, and we knew that it got dark there at 8:30. But the only thing that happens beyond this point now is how they use these tires and what the teams are allowed to do. And they were doing things on the fly. They were learning on the fly. They may have had some contingency plans worked out, but I think they had the drying of pit road was going to be an issue because they really didn't get a good chance to dry pit road, and they weren't going to run a bunch of caution laps to dry pit road. So,
Yeah, and I think I wanted to point that out that I absolutely believe the fact that they did not get pit road dry pretty much dictates the strategy in the calls by NASCAR through the end of this race. There's like 80 or so laps to go in the race. So if you're going to see NASCAR mandate the non-competitive pit stops, you can only use the wet weather tires. Basically, they were going to decide if we ever go back to slicks, and they never do go back to slicks. And I think it all comes back to pit road because if they leave it up to the teams after this first change, is somebody going to want to come down under green and change these tires? Well, they can't because pit road is wet. They can't come down and do a competitive pit stop, I believe, at least even under green at that point, because the conditions on pit road were going to be dangerous for the pit crew members. So you're not going to see the tire situation go into their hands. So I think there wasn't enough of a window. I wish they maybe would have gotten the cars off of pit road and took some time to actually dry it and then leave it up to the teams after the first or second stop. We did have natural cautions in this run to the end, so I don't know if NASCAR was going to plan on throwing competition cautions along the way, because you do see in these cautions that do happen, they come on and say, yes, you can come down. No, you can't come down. Yes, if you do come down, you have to change tires. I think even one of these cautions, some teams did come down and change tires when they weren't supposed to, and they made them come right back down again and put the other tires back on. So I think it all circles back to pit road not being dry. So you can agree or disagree with the calls that they made, but I think just that fact they didn't do it just dictated how they had to call the rest of the race. So if I could complain about anything, it's that they didn't take the time to do that. But as we see, when this race comes to an end, they basically only had 10 more minutes and it was too dark to race. Yeah, so I don't think they had time. They knew they had the wet weather tires, and they knew that they can get them back on track as they were designed, and it worked perfectly, quite honestly, I think, in that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, so Tim asks about the pit road speed. Ryan goes, all the way low in 3 and 4 to see what the grip level is like. Jonathan, says if there's competitive stops, they're going to go down the one on the lights on pit road, but they don't end up doing that. Tim says guys are dipping their tires on the front stretch, and you'll see this on TV. A bunch of guys going right along the pit wall on the front stretch, and that's what all they're doing is trying to get them wet. Then the 8 car spins out. He went hard into 3 and 4 and spun it out. To this day, I don't know if he saw anything today or not, said that something broke or not, but I think the driver broke. I don't want to say that.
Man, because he spun, I think, twice in the race, and then immediately waits through this 2-hour plus rain delay, immediately gets out on track and drives it into the wall. What? Yeah. And he I don't blame him. I had a Twitter exchange with him probably 10 years ago about him skipping post-race interviews. I didn't blame him for skipping this one, because what are you going to say, man? What a terrible, awful situation.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad they didn't try and put a microphone in his face, because it would have just been bad. He says it just went straight. That's actually what he said on the radio. For the choose cone here, the 45 takes the top. Ryan takes the bottom with the 11 behind Ryan. The 38 is behind the 45. Restarting at lap 2:27. Now it's called off for a lap because the 7 spun out trying to catch up. I think we got to call him Sir Spins a lot. I don't know. We got to come up with a nickname.
It's been rough, and I don't have anything against LaJoy, but I was just we talked before that I can't think of like a race in the last 5 races where that car hasn't spun around, and that has to be frustrating too.
Yeah. So it restarts at lap 2:28. Ryan, like I said, took it below the white line. He took it all the way almost to the grass in 1 and 2, looking for the moisture. he cleared up to P2 here, so that was good. At lap 231, the 5 and the 20 kind of get by him. He's back to P5. At lap 232, he passes the 38, gets to P4. And then we get a caution at lap 236 for the one car. And, Ryan says we're a little bit tight still. And that's something they said on TV about these tires, is that it was going to cause, you were going to have to loosen the car up a little bit. So we start lap 262. He sorts out the P2 on this restart. Really good here. Then 3 laps later, caution. This one is the 10 spinning out and hitting the 23, the 3, the 43, the 2. Jonathan asks how the forward drive is. And now they're getting a non-competitive stop, and they can change to the wets. So here it is that, they said, okay, you're allowed to change. You got to change to the wets. Everybody has to come in and change them. And Jonathan says, I got it loosened up a bit for you. That was 20 laps. There should be 30 left to go here. The choose cone, the 20 takes the top. Ryan decides to take the top behind him. The 5 car, who was 3rd position, he takes the top behind him. And the 45 goes to the bottom. And they restart lap 274. He clears all the way to P2 in 1 and 2. And the 5 kind of goes low, trying to get there. Low, but it doesn't work. At lap 280, he is 7/10 back, but was gaining. And then 3 laps later, we get caution for the 77. Maybe it's a spire thing they're spinning out. I don't know. Ryan still says we're tight. And at this point, they're staying out, but then they reopen pit road, and everybody's allowed to get a fresh set of damps. So Jonathan asks him, how much do you need freed up? And they're going to free him up pretty good here when they do this. So Jonathan's like, it's just all good, brother. Go get him after the pit stop. And we got the 20 taking the top. Ryan from P2 taking the top. The 34 car gets the front row. First time he's seen that in a long time. The 4 car, actually, who was in the 4th position, takes the top. And then the 5 car takes the bottom. Jonathan tells Ryan before this restart, took a big swing. So he wants him to know he loosened it up beyond loose. Be ready, but you're also going to be able to probably run where you haven't been able to run this whole time in on the wets, And we get.
I want to read. Won't be as good as like the Jeff and Jordan dramatizations that they do, because this was a one-sided conversation, because you were very in depth into taking notes. But minutes or seconds before that restart, I said, I text you, I'm worried about the 34. And then I just said desperation. And that was pretty much the end of that until the restart happened. So then you can talk about what happens here, and then maybe we can finish it.
I'm now going back through my.
So just note that was before the restart, with the 34 lined up on the front row.
And I don't think you were the only one. I think that Jerry Mariotti might have said the same thing to me right beforehand. I think you both did. So right before this restart here, Tim says, "Go do your thing. Go get him." And restart at lap 292 with the 4 pushing him. And then my next note is 34 sucks. I don't know how else to put this. The man decided that he was Superman. He had the best car on the track, and he was just going to drive it in there. 8 wheels are better than 4, right? His post-race thing, he says that about they were all in the higher lane, and the higher lane was the better lane. Well, I didn't see a hole there. Did you see a hole there, Adam? I don't know. Was there a hole where he could have gotten on the higher lane from the lower lane?
No, there's a very neon yellow, Menards yellow car.
Yeah, kind of in the way of the hole he was looking for.
Yeah.
So I don't know how he was going to make that stick. He comes out and admits that he slipped it, that the rear tires slipped on the paint. Well, that had happened for That had happened for the 70 previous laps that they ran on the wets, in the wet condition. Anybody who ran on the paint knew when you're on the paint, the tires were going to slide off the paint.
Yeah.
I
So
we'll finish the race here because he caused.
well, I want to finish the so immediately after on the in-car camera, I see Ryan spin around. I text you, called it. I don't know if you have your reply, but I have your reply. If I'm allowed to read it.
Yeah, you can read whatever. I don't.
You said, "Yep, that guy sucks."
Is that the way I put it? Well,
Man, it's just so unfortunate. And yeah, we could finish the race and then go through this move, but
yeah,
man, yeah, let's finish off how the race ends, I guess, and then
yeah. He's back to P28. They restart lap 297. Then we get a caution for the 6 car, and that happened right around Ryan. He slid up into Ryan almost, and Ryan kind of punted him out of the way.
Worth noting, Ryan's tires are, if they're not flat spotted, they aren't great because he says he used them up trying to stay off the wall, and then the next gen car isn't like great at turning, so they have to loop it basically to get going the right way. So he's spinning them out to loop the car back around again. So you can kind of see on that restart, he just drops back and kind of lets everybody go for the most part. It seems like he's just feeling things out a little bit, and so I immediately saw people complaining like, why didn't he get that far? The 34 got so much further than he did, blah, blah, blah. So he was in a different situation.
Yeah, he didn't get the damage. 34 didn't get damaged like Ryan did. So we get a green white checker finish with the 20 winning, and Ryan does move up to 25th during all that. There was guys spinning out and all kind of things that they didn't call cautions for during those 2 laps. But post race, I was waiting, in-car camera-wise. I had Ryan's on, and it pulled up pit road, and then it shut off pretty quick. And usually they leave them on for a couple minutes. And then, so I decided to change over to the 34 car. And the 34 cars kind of clicked off kind of quick. And now, like I said earlier, there's these 2 other cameras. So I went looking, and I'm like, well, let me see if they got this battle camera or the aerial camera. Well, the aerial camera found McDowell walking down to Ryan's car. So now I'm like, oh, well, he's going down there, and he's going down there to apologize. He wasn't running down there. He wasn't going to fight nobody. He knew it did. And I got a nice snapshot of it, and I hurried up and made a meme, real simple. Because Brian's got his mouth kind of closed. He's got his hand on his water bottle of body armor, and McDowell looks like he's talking, and he says, here's what I said. He said, "I'm sorry. I misjudged my talent and ability."
I would say that's probably pretty accurate.
That's pretty accurate. I mean, if he's really going to apologize, that is the apology. I'm really mad at they played back the radio of McDowell after it happened, and was it his spotter or was it his crew chief that was like, something about that's what we're here to do or something like that, or.
Yeah, it's probably just egging on that concept that they have to win to get in and that kind of thing.
You got to do it. You got to do whatever you can do. It's like, well, unless just wrecking the field till you get to the front is what you're trying to do. I don't see where, like I said, he knew that the higher lane was the better lane of the 2. He started in the lower lane. You pin yourself to the lower lane. You make your best attempt to run side by side, getting to 3 and 4. And maybe you get lucky running side by side in 3 and 4. But to go into 1 and 2 like he did and just try to look for a hole or something, I don't know what he was thinking. Really don't. Because he come up onto the white line, the paint, and he just spun because of the paint. And it was like, yeah, there's just.
Yeah. His post-race interview, his statement was, and NASCAR made a wonderful graphic out of this that I've shared on our Facebook and our X account with some commentary on him on my thought on it. But he said, "I was in a do or die situation. I had to go for it. I know it was a low percentage move, but I had to try." That's great. That's the 3rd time he's said that this year. He did it at Texas. He did it at Talladega. and now he's done it at New Hampshire. Crashed, at least for Texas, it was crashing for the lead. I said to you when we discussed this before, I'll give him Talladega. He made a horrible block at Talladega trying to win the race. Dozens of other guys have done that. I'll give him that one, whatever, if that was the only one. And then here, it wasn't even for the lead, Steve. They were running for second, and the 20 was got a great restart. The 20 was gone.
There is some, he rallies for a little bit better finish than he should have probably. But if you take those 3 races and you put him, where he could have finished without doing the stupid things that he did in those races, he probably has 40 more points right now on those finishes. And guess what? If he had 40 more points, he'd be right at or near the cut line for the playoffs and have a chance to point his way in. So don't tell me about the desperation. Desperation comes because you drive like crap all season long, and then you need to depend on something to happen at the end. Chicago's his only hope right now coming up, and I hope that everybody puts him in the wall by the end of the first turn. I'm sorry. I'm a little angry.
Yeah, he seems to be a fine guy out of the car, in the car, even like Ryan, like Joey, like he's a totally different animal, but he's also, racing from behind most of the time. They have been better. These cars have been better this year, which is part of the reason why it's kind of shocking that he's decided to leave to go to Spire Motorsports next year. Because and they have an alliance with, guess who? Team Penske, and they're suddenly running better. So it's unfortunate. They're not teammates or anything, but it is unfortunate that another essentially a Ford teammate, an Alliance teammate, just makes a move like that and takes you out. And can you imagine if Ryan didn't have that win at Iowa last week? How we would feel right now.
Yeah, the attitude probably would be even worse. But the guy as a whole, like, I always remember him being an extremely good road course driver. Okay, and a ringer, per se. And as a matter of fact, he used to like train other guys.
Yes.
I remember something about Dave going and working with them on road course racing. And that's only when they only did 2 road courses a year, So I know and understand that he's really good at that. And I understand that because of this next gen car, a lot of the teams are able to be a lot closer on road courses, than anywhere else they run. It's almost like super speedways, where everybody seems to have a chance. Well, he has skill and ability there, and he showed it last year in Indianapolis, right? With that road race. But other places, the program that they're on and have, they're not. They're not going to, if they can scrap a top 10, that's a big day for them. They're with some good strategies and work their way through a couple things, and a couple things happen to other people, that's a big day for them. And forcing your way and thinking, well, I got to try because I got no other shot, that's not a good attitude to have. You sometimes have to take what you have and, if he doesn't do what he does there and they run the rest of the laps without having another caution, he probably finishes top 5. I wouldn't say he would have faded too much. Ryan and everything with the 20 would have had maybe a chance to get to him with whatever changes they made, But that's the thing. It's like some of these guys just get a little too crazy in the helmet there,
You bring up strategy being part of the reason why sometimes the front row guys get up front. You remember why the 34 is up front in this race? Fuel strategy.
Yeah.
They stayed out long. I forget what the scenario was. The 34, the 45, and several other guys that were up front before the rain came. They were kind of stretching things to race to the rain and hoping that it was going to end. In the break, the 34, I think the crew chief and the driver were interviewed, and they said, we're not going to make it on fuel. We barely have any fuel left. And we mentioned at that break, this was very confusing. PRN, the radio partner, says they weren't allowed to add fuel. Denny, several other people said, yes, they added fuel at the break, completely taking all of that out, all of that strategy out of the game here. Again, I said everything was going to circle back to pit road. I think that's what it was again. They basically had to let them put fuel in because they weren't going to be able to make pit stops live because of pit road being wet. So I understand that, but yeah, 34 was out front, not because he had a great car, it was because of a fuel strategy at the time. So I mentioned how mad we would be if Ryan didn't have that win last week to have in his pocket. There's still a reason to be mad. um, he missed an incredible opportunity to gain points on the guys that he's racing with within the top 10 of the Cup Series point standings right now. Going into this race last week, Ryan was 7th in the standings, 90 points back of the leader. Coming out of this race, thankfully, because of the great stage points he got, he's just 94 points back of the leader now. He did lose a position in 8th. So he lost a position, he lost 4 points. Biggest thing here, he finishes 25th. He could have finished top 5 at guaranteed, probably top 5 at most likely second. The guys in front of him, William Byron in 7th is 72 points back of the leader. If Ryan finishes in second, he has an opportunity to keep that 7th position and get even closer to the guys in 5th and 6th, Tyler Reddick, Christopher Bell, minus 60 to the leader, minus 65 to the leader. That is massive to be within striking distance of 5th position in the point standings. Said this last week because at the reset for the playoffs, you get bonus playoff points that you carry through the playoffs based on how you finish in the top 10 of the point standings. So that one terrible, awful move cost Ryan an opportunity to go out and get a win. We don't know what would have happened. You mentioned Jonathan Hassler made a big swing, what he called a big swing at the setup to free the car up to be able to go out there and try to chase down Christopher Bell for the win and get the bonus points that way. We were robbed of that opportunity because of that move. He's robbed of 20 plus finishing points essentially that would have drawn him so close to 5th, 6th, 7th in the standings. And that's what frustrates me the most. Just seeing that, because I mean, follow the points pretty closely every week. And I just know how important those bonus points would be going forward. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I was good yesterday, but now I'm a little bit frustrated. The only saving grace I will say that happened in this race is the fact that Ryan didn't get the lead before the red flag, because I feel like I'd be devastated. I would have been devastated when they restarted that race.
Yeah. That was the thing, is like you know, you're P2 and the red flag happens, and that's the debate. It's like, well, if they get a chance to continue, we get a chance to try and win.
And he was probably a corner away from passing the 45 when that red came out in the first place. So it's like,
yeah, we just want a shot at him. And, but you're right. If it was P1, I'll let it rain all night. You know?
Oh, totally different.
Tyler Reddick during that rain delay was such a riot. Every time they put a camera on him, he was making faces, and he was just hoping that he was hoping that they would have called it. I mean, who could blame him? You know,
yeah,
he would have earned it. He would have earned it with the strategy they made, and you know.
And there was a point they had the camera on his crew too when it was downpouring like really hard, and it looked like somebody said something to them that made them think maybe they had called the race, because they started to celebrate for like a second, but then somebody leaned back down again to get clarification. Then they're like, "Oh no!" And then they're like kind of banging their heads off the monitors and stuff. So, but yeah, thankfully, man, yeah, because if we would have waited 2 hours with Ryan in the lead, and then it goes back racing, I would have been sad. I would have been sad for sure. So that's where we are. I feel like we laid into the 30, as I said, the driver of the 34 car.
Yeah,
enough.
I think we're properly laid into him enough. Yeah, it's not going to change how he drives next week.
Focus forward. There's still an opportunity here. Again, 94 points out of the lead. I don't think Ryan's going to be in contention for the regular season point standings victory, but if he can get to 5th, that would be huge when it comes to playoff points. Yeah. He was going to be so close to that. So that's unfortunate. So that's where those standings lie. Another opportunity this week coming up at Nashville. We'll preview that race in a little bit. But we do have some housekeeping to take care of when it comes to the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League and going over our starting lineups there and our results there and the point standings in that league. I know it was a great week for the Mez household. It was not a great week for me. I know my wife was upset because at the red flag, she was in the top 10. So she didn't stick there, though. So that's unfortunate for her. But let's take a look at my starting lineup. And I did make a mistake a little bit here by not really paying attention as I had the previous couple of weeks. and left some big points in the garage. And actually, maybe part of this is because it was a surprise that he ended up with a lot of points. And so my starting lineup: Brad Keselowski got me 9 points. Chase Elliott got me 29 points. William Byron, man, they were off, just off all day. 11 points. Christopher Bell, the winner, I did have him, 57 total points. That was great. Joey Logano had a run-in with the 9 car at one point during this race, did not finish well at all, but made his way back into the above the cut line in the playoff standing. So kudos to him, because the guys around him had awful days. So Joey got me 22 points. In my garage, Martin Truex Jr., 42 points total by the end of the day here. But there's a point when he was crashed and turned around, but methodically, through all the craziness and chaos, worked his way back up to, I think, a top 10 finish. So 9th. But I left him in my garage because things were not well, I think, at the end of 2 stages. So I left him in there, but yeah, he rallied. So that was unfortunate. Featured matchups. I picked Ryan over Keselowski. That actually worked out still, 25th and 28th. So that's great. Picked Bell over Truex. That was right. I picked Elliott over Hamlin. That was right. I picked Barry over Stenhouse. That was also right. So I was 4 for 4 on my featured matchups, but it did not, because of my starting lineup, things did not go well overall. 57th on the weekend, 168 total points. Do you have your lineup pulled up? You want me to roll through?
Yeah, I got it. Because this is kind of interesting here, because what you said about Truex, I also looked at like where they were before the end of the stage, but I also looked at stage points, because you look at Logano, and Logano finished 2nd and 3rd in the stages, so he gained a bunch of points on stage points there, even though he finished 32nd. But Truex, that's why Truex was also, he finished 6th and he finished 2nd in the stages too. So yeah, I had Logano, I had Christopher Bell, who gives me 57 points, Chase Elliott with 29, Truex with the 42, Hamlin with 27. I had Byron in the garage. He didn't have any stage points at all at that point, And then I had all 4 of the matchups correct. So I maximized my lineup as best I could. Without having, like, Ryan would have been a good choice in there, just because all his stage points too. But yeah, I did pretty good. I ended up 11th, 12th,
tied for 12th.
Tied for 12th. Yeah.
217 points. You are 1 point out of the top 10. Yeah. So very close. So let's take a look at that top 10, which actually starts with a 3-way tie for 9th. And here's the other part of the Mez household, C-Mez. That's it. 218 points. She beat you by 1. The wife beat you by 1 point.
My lovely wife dominating in the fantasy this week. She was loving it.
So 3-way tie for 9th. C-Mez, Frank Fan 12, Racing Girl 12, 218 points earned. 8th position, the Buckeye Bull at 221. 7th, Christian Dana, 223. It's amazing how some of these folks are just so consistent every single week. I wish I had that ability. 6th, the Dalai Lama 4, 224. 5th, our friend Nicole Stellanarius, 228. 4th is Racer SF, 231. Tie for 2nd, JD Racing, who's in our Discord, and Factory of Sadness 6, tied for 2nd, 233 points. And another member of our Discord chat here in 1st, Nellis Straightaway, 236 points, wins the weekend by 3 points. Congratulations to him. So that's the week at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Let's take a look at the overall standings in the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. I'm still down here in the 33rd position, holding it down all by myself, 3,269 points. Steve, you are moving away from me once again, 22nd position, 3,392. Let's take a look at the top 10 currently overall standings. Charlie Abu, 10th, 3,508. Tie for 8th, Christian Dana, Penske Fan 24, 3,524. 7th is Blaney or Bust, 3,530. 6th is Racer SF, 3,542. And 5th is Alyssa C, 3,549. 4th is Factory of Sadness 6, 3,552. 3rd is Blaneyac 10, 3,590. 2nd, Frank Fan 12, 3,618. And still holding down the lead for another week in the first position is Go Larson, 3,636. So I have to say, Frank Fan 12, Blaneyac 10, You're in second and third. You're still within striking distance of Go Larson. Kudos to them for being in the league, and I'm sure there's some form of a Ryan fan too. But it'd be great to see Frank Fan 12 or Blaney 10 fall up. I think in the standings just for the way things look. So good luck to them. So that brings us now. I said focus forward. We're moving forward, and that is back to the great state of Tennessee, to the Nashville Super Speedway for another race weekend in the NASCAR Cup Series. But things are going to kick off Friday, June 28th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, with the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series with the Rackley Roofing 200 at Nashville. You can watch that race on FS2. Then Saturday, June 29th, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, you have the NASCAR Cup Series practice and qualifying at Nashville Superspeedway. That's going to be on the USA Network. Again, that's 2 p.m. Eastern Time. 5 p.m. Eastern Time, you have the NASCAR Xfinity Series Tennessee Lottery 250 at Nashville Superspeedway. That's on USA. So triple header weekend there. Notable for those of us that are keeping track of fan rewards. Big points weekend for that. Sunday, June 30th, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the NASCAR Cup Series Ally 400 at Nashville Superspeedway. And this one, notable, moves to the NBC network. So we've been on USA for the most part once NBC took over this year. So this looks like this is going to be the first race this year on NBC. So keep that in mind, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Nashville Superspeedway. We don't have a big resume when it comes to Ryan here. 3 starts, and these it's been a roller coaster. 37th, 3rd, and 36th. So Ryan has an average start of 9.7, average finish of 25.3, one top 5, one top 10, which is that third place finish in the middle. 2 DNFs. That first year was really weird. Damages the car on pace laps coming up, I believe, up onto the track, already immediately damaged. And then it destroys a brake rotor, I think, is what ended up taking him out immediately in that race. He only made 53 laps in the inaugural race there at Nashville Superspeedway for the Cup Series. Comes back in 2022, fantastic race, starts 6th, finishes 3rd. So he can get around that place. Last year, 2023 race, both of us went to. He was running great in the race, but only made it 146 laps and took one of, honestly, Ryan, I think last year had 2 of the hardest hits all year long, and this was one of them. Into an inside wall, no safer barrier, really scary incident with what happened there with the impact, and luckily, obviously, he walks away from that, only to, I think, Daytona a little bit later on in the season takes another big scary hit there too. So that wall does have protection now. So that's great because these cars definitely always seem to find any area where it's not protected and they will hit it. So thankfully, SMI has done something to prepare that area for. So I don't think we have a real accurate look at how this 12 team will perform this weekend, but I think with the speed that they've had recently, with the way they ran in 2022, the way they were running in 2023, I don't see why we shouldn't see this team qualify in the top 15, run in the top 10, hopefully contend for at least a top 5. I'm not sure with their body of work this year whether a win is possible on this style of track, but this is a totally different 12 team than I think we had 4 or 5 races ago.
Yeah, they've gained. Just the program overall has gained in the last month and a half, even though some of the finishes don't show it due to all kind of different things. That's the funny part about the bad finishes in the last couple of weeks. They've all been goofy, different things. Not like one thing that keeps happening over and over and over again. No, the one week it's this, the one week it's that. This past week it's somebody else causing the issue. So yeah, I mean, this week, who knows? Like watching practice and qualifying, hopefully it stays dry and they get those in because the matrix, I'm not sure, will be as favorable, because it was finished this week. So it'd be nice to make sure you have a chance to start in the top 10 and just work forward from there. But even if they don't, I know I have confidence in what Jonathan does week in, week out, and they'll have a car quick enough to get to the top 10, even if they don't start there. So.
Well, we talked about fantasy a little bit from last week. We're going to be looking forward to fantasy this week. So I want to run through at least the top 10 finishers from this race last year. Ross Chastain won the race. Truex was second, Hamlin third, Elliott, Larson, Byron, Bell, Jones, Kyle Busch, AJ Allmendinger. That was the top 10. I don't know whether in Trackhouse Suarez finished 12th, so they were both in the top 15 at least. So I don't know if Trackhouse they've slipped a little bit this year, so I'm not sure if they're going to be good. This is one of their quasi home tracks, so maybe they'll put a lot of effort into this again. But I think you're looking at the bread and butter of the series here, though. The Hendrick cars and the Gibbs cars, I think, are going to be really strong once again. We used to look at Chase Elliott was winning a lot at like Dover and Martinsville and any of these tracks that do have concrete on them. So I don't know if that's going to be a factor at all in the next gen era, but he did finish fourth at this race last year. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the 9 car has been running strong all the way up until getting dumped by the 22 on accident this past week. So really strong team this year. So Chase Elliott, someone I'm going to look at. Kyle Larson, I mean, he was in contention in this race this past week too. Wouldn't be shocked to see him running up front. But Truex finished second last year. Maybe finally something good happens to him and then he breaks through for a victory. Anybody specifically you're thinking of this week when it comes to fantasy? Because I need some tips, clearly.
I'm kind of weary of even the 2311 guys, but sometimes they show up here and just have speed like you wouldn't believe, but then something happens to them too where they just kind of like disappear in the middle of a race. So that's usually my little wild card guys to go with, but I'm going to be the same way. I'm going to look at maybe 2 Hendricks and a Gibbs, and I don't have any more starts for Ryan myself, but if we did, see how Ryan does in practice qualifying, and then Joey, because Joey now is a desperation guy now too. He's right near the cut line, right above the cut line, but he'd rather win a race and not have to worry about the cut line. So they're probably going to points race a little bit. So Joey would be a good one just because they're probably going to try to stay in the top 5 and finish in the top 5.
I mentioned questioning Trackhouse a little bit here, but maybe you do need to look at him. Ross Chastain had finished in the top 5. It looks like 3 straight races, the 3 straight races. Suarez has 2 top 15 finishes and a top 10 finish. So when you're at the stage that you're at in the season when it comes to fantasy, again, me giving you tips is laughable. You might have to look to somebody like a Suarez because you've run out of other people. So you kind of look at these stats. But yeah, okay, Ross Chastain, that first start, he was in the 42 car. So totally different team too. I mean, well, technically stayed in the same building, but operationally run by different people. So maybe Chastain is somebody I need to take a look at. Honestly, I don't think I've really used him much this year. So I would just say you don't have like a lot to look through. So really easy to pull up Racing Reference or driveraverages.com, that kind of stuff, and see the finishing order of the past 3 races there. And that might be able to kind of direct you on the right path when it comes to picking your fantasy lineup this week. But you can also, like you said, as long as weather doesn't impact practice and qualifying, that's going to give you a really good idea as well. So again, this weekend's NASCAR and TV report for Nashville Super Speedway. You can watch the Truck Series race 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday on FS2. Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, you have Cup Series practice and qualifying on USA. 5 p.m., you have the Xfinity Series race on USA. And then Sunday, June 30th, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the Ally 400 at Nashville Super Speedway. That is on the NBC network. Well, Steve, I guess that pretty much wraps up this week's episode of the Team Blaney podcast. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. If you could interact, or you can interact with us on Facebook and X at Team Blaney, and on Instagram and TikTok at team.blaney. And I mentioned our YouTube channel earlier. You can catch up on that Ryan interview from last week, catch up on the more than a dozen interviews we've done with crew members, like you said, crew chief, spotters, most of the people you can think of. You can catch up on all of those really great interviews on our YouTube channel. Just search for Team Blaney. We'd also like to encourage you to support the Ryan Blaney Family Foundation. Ryan's official charitable organization benefits brain health causes like UPMC Sports Medicine and the Alzheimer's Association. To learn more, visit ryanblaneyfamilyfoundation.org, or also follow them on Facebook, X, and Instagram. So for my co-host Steve Mez, I'm Adam Rogers. We'll catch you next time right here on the Team Blaney podcast.
Good night, Brussels. Check out the TikTok.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.